capsule in the 12th century, and that it was then dug up in the 16th, dug up in the 16th century. But actually all these Rosicrucian documents were ponied up by people in the 16th century who had a very complicated political agenda, which we will probably discuss as part of this weekend. Hermetic philosophy is based on what is called the hermetic corpus. This is a group of books, the most important of which is called the Asclepius. And these books, most of them, were completely lost during the Middle Ages. At the fall of the Roman Empire, copies of these Hermetic manuscripts were systematically destroyed by enthusiastic Christian barbarians. And the Hermetic manuscripts were scattered, and they only survived then in monasteries in Syria and places like that. Well, then in the Renaissance, the Council of Florence, under the patronage of the Borgias and people like that, they became there was this great interest suddenly in antiquities, because these Roman statuary and stuff was coming out of the ground. So the Council of Florence commissioned a character named Gemistus Pletho to go to Syria and bring back these manuscripts. And they established a translation commission. And they had, in manuscript, the works of Plato, the works of Hermes Trismegistus, a whole bunch of ancient literature. And to show you what the psychology of the Renaissance was, here they had Plato, which they hadn't been able to read for 1,000 years, sitting there waiting for translation. And Cosimo de' Medici said to Marcello Ficino, Plato can wait. Translate the Hermetic corpus first. And so it was done. If you're interested in Renaissance Hermeticism, you can't do better than read Dame Frances Yates' book, Giordano Bruno and the Hermetic Tradition. Well, I want to read you some of this stuff because it's very interesting, and it has a modernity that is astonishing. It's also very psychedelic. Here's a little passage on the imagination. I'm reading from Book 9 of the Corpus Hermeticum in the Scott translation. This is a 4-volume set. I only brought the text and translation volume, but if you read Greek, it's all here. If you don't, it's all here in English. But this will just give you a feeling for the approach. If then you do not make yourself equal to God, you cannot apprehend God, for like is known by like. Leap clear of all that is corporeal, and make yourself to a like expanse with that greatness which is beyond all measure. Rise above all time, and become eternal. Then you will apprehend God. Think that for you too nothing is impossible. Deem that you too are immortal, and that you are able to grasp all things in your thought, to know every craft and every science. Find your home in the haunts of every living creature. Make yourself higher than all heights and lower than all depths. Bring together in yourself all opposites of quality, heat and cold, dryness and fluidity. Think that you are everywhere at once, on land, at sea, in heaven. Think that you are not yet begotten, that you are in the womb, that you are young, that you are old, that you have died, that you are in the world beyond the grave. Grasp in your thought all this at once, all times and places, all substances and qualities and magnitudes together, then you can apprehend God. But if you shut up your soul in your body and abase yourself and say, I know nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of earth and sea, I cannot mount to heaven, I know not what I was, nor what I shall be, then what have you to do with God? Your thought can grasp nothing evil and good if you cleave to the body and are evil. Interesting. Very different from the humble yourself, hard labor, spun wool and watery beer approach of medieval Christianity. Here's an amazing passage. People like to think people thought the world was flat until the Renaissance. This is an incredible psychedelic image of outer space that is 2nd century A.D. Would that it were possible for you to grow wings and soar into the air. Poised between earth and heaven, you might see the solid earth, the fluid sea and the streaming rivers, the wandering air, the penetrating fire, the courses of the stars, and the swiftness of the movement with which heaven encompasses all. What happiness were that, my son, to see all these borne along with one impulse, and to behold him who is unmoved, moving in all that moves, and him who is hidden, made manifest through his works. And it goes on and on. It's very readable. It's very literary. It's highly poetic. It's a celebration of nature. The notion of sin is completely absent, and it rings with a kind of confidence, a kind of joy that was completely running counter to the brimstone and damnation point of view of Christianity. Here's to me, a psychedelic passage. But he who presents all things to us through our senses, and thereby manifests himself through all things and in all things, and especially to those to whom he wills to manifest himself. Begin then, my son Tat, with a prayer to the Lord and Father, who alone is good. Pray that you may find favor with him, and that one ray of him, if only one, may flash into your mind, so that you may have power to grasp in thought that mighty being. For thought alone can see that which is hidden, inasmuch as thought itself is hidden from sight. And if even the thought which is within you is hidden from your sight, how can he, being in himself, be manifest to you through your bodily eyes? But if you have power to see with the eyes of the mind, then, my son, he will manifest himself to you. For the Lord manifests himself ungrudgingly through all the universe, and you can behold God's image with your eyes and lay hold on it with your hands. If you wish to see him, think on the sun, think on the course of the moon, think on the order of the stars. Who is it that maintains that order? The sun is the greatest of the gods in heaven. To him, as to their king and overlord, and all the kings of heaven yield place. And yet this mighty God, greater than earth and sea, submits to having smaller stars circling above him. Who is it then, my son, that he always obeys with reverence and awe? Each of these stars, too, is confined by measured limits and has an appointed space to range in. Why do not all the stars in heaven run like and equal courses? Who is it that is assigned to each its place and marked out for each the extent of its course? And so forth. So it's a nature-oriented, celebratory. It glories in the exercise of the mind. It is not doctrinal. It is not pietistic. It is magical, psychedelic, expansive.